my name is Jiyoung Kwon, Professor of Arts and Cultural Management at Honyung University in Seoul, Korea. And I'm delighted to have with us today three persons. Kim Verrier, Exhibits Curator of Red Deer Museum and Art Gallery, and Patrick and Marisa Mitsuing, who are both artists, educator, and co-founder of Powwow Times from Alberta, Canada. Welcome, and thank you for being with us today. Now, this institution has won the Robert R. Janes Award for Social Responsibility in 2023. So they are here to tell us about their project. And so Kim, could you please briefly describe the Red Deer Museum and Art Gallery for us?
Before we start, I'd just like to say, in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of Treaty 6, located north of the Red Deer River, and Treaty 7, located south of the Red Deer River. This area is a gathering place of the Nehiyawak, Saulteaux, Dene, Nakota Sioux, and the Blackfoot Confederacy, which includes the Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani, as well as the Iaehe and Tsuut'ina nations, the Métis people, and all people who make their homes in this region. And I just want to give you a sense of where we are, because I know this is all over the world. To give a sense of place, Red Deer is in central Alberta, roughly an hour and a half from either Calgary or Edmonton. While not geographically central in the province, this area is considered central due to its location between Alberta's two largest cities. So I'll tell you a little bit about our museum. The Red Deer Museum and Art Gallery is an art and history museum that encourages our visitors to understand the people, history, and culture of central Alberta. We were built in 1978, and we are a one-story structure that has had the distinction of winning the most boring postcard competition. So that's our claim to fame. Not very exciting. Within our walls, we have a permanent exhibition called Remarkable Red Deer, Stories from the Heart of the Parkland, where we tell the history and current happenings in our community. And we also have temporary exhibit spaces where we display loaned and in-house art and history exhibitions. We hold over 66,000 objects in our collection, with the majority of our artifacts being settler donor artifacts that speak heavily to our rural roots. But interesting, we also hold a significant clothing and textile collection, local contemporary art, and a significant Indigenous and Inuit art collection.
That sounds like a really important museum in your area, and also very meaningful. Great collection, sounds like. Now, what were the particular qualities or innovations that impressed the Robert R. Janes Award for Social Responsibility jury in 2023? Can you tell us about maybe the innovative projects that you carried on?
So the particular qualities, that impressed the Robert R. Janes Award was our museum's willingness to share authority and take risks associated with handing over power to our community members. They were impressed in how we grew relationships with community partners, has allowed us to meet and highlight the different community needs in our region. And then that has transformed our exhibitions and programming. The Robert R. Janes was impressed because they noticed that we have a very joyful approach to celebrating Indigenous culture in our exhibition space as well. We make sure to balance the heartache with the resiliency, the humor, and the love that our Indigenous community here speaks to and highlights. So that's why we got the Robert R. Janes Award, and then all the work we did with Patrick and Marisa.
That sounds very much in vein with what the museum community tries to achieve these days, community engagement. Now, can you tell us the steps you took in reigniting community engagement with Canada's Indigenous communities? And what kinds of exhibitions did you organize, and how did you do it?
So one of the biggest steps that we took as staff was to be involved in the community. We looked at what was important to us and our community, and then we looked at ways to engage. Much of the engagement work that is taking place in our community, we want to support it if it's going to make our community a better place to be. So when we reignited this work in 2010, we took note that the Canadian government was in the midst of holding the Truth and Reconciliation Commission hearings. To give context, from 2007 to 2015, The Truth and Reconciliation Commission, known as the TRC, provided those affected by the legacy of Indian residential schools with an opportunity to share their stories and experiences. The commission traveled across Canada recording stories and acknowledging experiences, and in each community they had official listeners. These were made up of Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples, allies, who listened to every story from their community and then validated each person's experience. It created a historical record of the residential school system and really is a testament to the courage of each person who came forward to tell their stories or that of a loved one. The result was a multi-volume report and the 94 guiding calls to action. A staff member from our museum attended Red Deer's hearings and participated in the stories. And then the one that kind of was the catalyst of events for us to really reignite us was one particular event was launched. Red Deer had a community feast at the Red Deer Indian Industrial Site or across the way where a lot of ceremony happens in our community. And this was in about 2010 in like a bright June summer day. And they had members of each of the reservations in which our school attendees came from read the names of their students who attended the school. And that day, us staff, we sat on a hill in the blazing sun. And as we sat there, and in my memory, it was like a 3-hour ceremony of listening to names. As we sat there, names after names. And these community members, and one of the groups of community members traveled 1,200 kilometers to get here. And it made an invaluable introduction to the topic and the importance, I speak good English at times, and the fullness of the issue. This event really did make a lasting mark on us. It made such a lasting mark that from that time on, we help our museum donates money so that the community feast that continues, we're able to support it in a small way as well, because we thought it was such an important event to be part of.
So all these buried stories are being untapped and brought to light. Is that what it is?
Yeah, and it's to be allowed into such an important ceremony as well, and to be made felt welcome. And within that ceremony, there was so much protocols that we learned and experienced firsthand was amazing.
Is this what you call the Walking with Our Sister ceremony?
Yeah, and so about 5 years after that, we had the opportunity to host Walking with Our Sisters. Walking with Our Sisters was really the catalyst for our leap into sharing authority. It is a ceremony honoring the missing and murdered Indigenous women. It was conceptualized by artist Christy Belcourt, who pulled together Indigenous leaders from across Canada who led this ceremony. At the basic level, the ceremony is moccasin vamps, and so vamps are the top part of moccasins, the really beautifully beaded parts, and they were laid out in a pathway to visitors walk around. The vamps were created by family members of missing and murdered Indigenous women, and the vamps were to represent the beautiful unfinished lives of these women and children. And so when we agreed to host this exhibition here, we were just the host side, and we had to approach our Indigenous community, and it came with an incredible document of resource of protocols, because our museum became the ceremonial site, but this was led and to be led by the women in our community. And the women in our community, I can't even explain how fabulous these women are. And they really took this project and this ceremony and made it such a special, meaningful event, both for our museum and for our staff. And one of the things I like to tell people about, especially within the museum world, was during this time, because we were a sacred and ceremonial space, and these vamps are considered, they're our sisters, and they need to be smudged and they need to be healed. The lead women in the project, who were known as keepers, and the lead men who helped with the fire, and the men weren't leaders, but the lead men who helped with the fire, they ran a fire for 3 weeks beside our museum in a teepee. It was wonderful. But we gave them keys and codes to our museum. So if they needed to get into the museum at any time of day, they had the access and the ability to do that. They didn't have to ask us. They just could come and they could sit. And in a lot of places, you know, we think about museums and we think about security, and that's not something we would normally anticipate ever doing. And by releasing authority and releasing that, oh my goodness, it just kind of really changed how we went about doing things.
Wow, I'm really impressed how you really made that step, you know, that big leap of faith to turn the governance around. That's really amazing. And also how you addressed this difficult heritage that you have in Canada, and to make the museum a healing place for, at the same time, for these past, you know, contested, difficult memories, you know. I think that's really, really impressive and really worthwhile project that you conducted. Wow, I'm getting really touched here. Okay, now we have here Patrick and Marisa Mitsuin, who are both co-founders of Powwow Project, right? So can you explain a little bit about the Powwow Ho Chi Minh, the Origins Project, and what's it all about?
Yeah, for sure. You know, in the surface level, it's a display of 7 different dance styles that we have in our ceremony called Buat Samuin, which is our powwow. And each of these dances that is displayed was made by artists coming from the origin area that dance comes from. And we wanted to display our beauty of our indigenous culture and the stories that come along with each dance style. You know, that's on the surface of what it is. And, you know, kind of going deeper into it, it's a way for my wife and I with this project to show, you know, the world and the people who get to experience Ho Chi Minh, the beauty of our people. Many times we're stereotyped and we have a particular viewpoint of how people look at us, and we deal with a lot of racism right in our own lands of where we come from. And so we wanted to combat all the stereotypes of how people look at us, and show people who we really are, because a lot of what is displayed on the news and you know, stories that may be happening in living rooms is what they're seeing is what Kim kind of mentioned, is the traumas that we've been through residential schools, walking with our sisters, missing and murdered women. And many times the people looking in don't get to see past that. They only see the pain that we've carried, and they don't get to see our beautiful languages, or hear our beautiful languages, or see our beautiful beadwork, and see how we carry ourselves in a really good way. And so on a deeper level, that's what this Ho Chi Minh is about, is to really educate people on who we are as Indigenous people. And, you know, big part of that is for our children and the generations ahead of time, because we have a lot of foreigners and a lot of people live in Canada here. If they lose their culture, they could fly back to their home country to regain it, to learn their songs, to learn their languages. For us Indigenous people, if we lose our culture here, there's nowhere we can go. This is the land that holds all our stories, all our language, and all our beauty. And it's a way for us with the museum to pass this knowledge down for generations, so our children's children could see just how beautiful we are.
Mm-hmm. And historically, in the beadwork, we were able to tell stories and things like that. And from the artist perspective, as someone who created one of the couple of the regalia pieces, it really was one of the first times that a handful of the artists who contributed to the project really were able to have their artistic style represented the way that they wanted with their tribe. And you know, in the colors, the beads, everything that everything that was contracted also holds a story as well. So you know, it was just an opportunity for us to tell our stories from an authentic place.
And I'm sure there's this you know, great amount of invaluable, tangible and intangible heritage that you carry. And it's your responsibility, you know, your generation, to transmit it to the younger generation. So you guys play a really important role, you know, in in connecting the link, between the past and the present to the future. So that's really amazing. Now, in carrying on this project, you must have also encountered some challenges or difficulties. So maybe can you share some of that with us, and also some positive experiences that you had along the way?
For sure. Sometimes you'll hear from indigenous people, they'll say land back. And they don't necessarily mean like, give us all the land back. It means like, let's open up these spaces that we could occupy and share who we are. And a lot of the museum exhibits you see out there, we're not indigenous. And so can we make some of those, spaces that showcase that we are people of this land that is occupied here in Canada and United States. And so the challenging part was, not this project that we proposed. I don't think it's been done anywhere else. And so it was so new to try articulate for someone's imagination to be like, what could this look like? What could this be like? And so because of it being so new, and because of, Red Deer Museum and Art Gallery giving us a chance, changing their governance, giving authority to, the unknown, that was very challenging. And for us as young curators, we've never done a project that big during that time, right? And so they gave us an opportunity, and the challenge was taking that opportunity and taking something that was invisible and making it into a reality, which was the finished product of the museum. And Marissa did wonders, and she'll talk about those challenges of getting all the artists communicating with each other. Maybe you could speak on how those art pieces were created.
So that was probably maybe the trickiest part for us, was making sure that each artist, because every regalia required so many different components from different artists. It was kind of matching everything together and making sure, okay, yeah, does this fit with this? Does this story on this regalia make sense with the piece that this artist created for it? And so going back and forth with that. And we also had like other things, like we opened during COVID, and so what that looked like. And that was a really beautiful experience for us. There were things we'd never done, like a curator's talk. And so there was a lot of like personal growth as well. And then really diving into a lot of the stories that were told within the beadwork. It on a personal level, both my parents are Indian residential school survivors. And to be able to reflect and sit in a lot of the newness that was coming from that, and some of the triggers in creating some of these pieces, and going back and learning some of the stories of the flowers and the land and the colors that we used and why we use them. So there was a handful of both good and bad, but definitely had the whole entire experience for the entire the artists that we had contracted was so positive.
Well, yeah, I'm very eager to see it. I mean, just you describing it makes me really want to see how beautiful it is. I mean, diversity is what makes our world beautiful, and what you have is really special that hasn't been exposed and didn't have a platform for it. And I think it's really commendable for the Red Deer Museum to provide an important platform for the Indigenous community to come out to the community and share this very special heritage with the rest of the Canadian community. I think that sets a really good example for other museums in Canada, I think, personally. Yeah, so I think it's really very special what you've done with the museum. And I think it's wonderful that, the two of you, the institution and the communities, have been able to come together to produce such a beautiful, harmonious program and event, that's healing as well as uplifting and positive, moving forward to kind of let the past rest in peace and just move forward for a more positive and inclusive future, I think. Yeah. Okay. Is there anything you'd like to add?
And with there being, I don't know if you call it shy, about one of Patrick and Marissa's ideas during this project, this Powwow Ochi and the Origin, that's the name of the exhibit, was that they wanted to have a powwow. And we initially, and they're laughing at me, we initially were like, that's a great idea. We'll have this nice tiny powwow beside the museum and just make it nice and small. And Patrick and Marissa, and this is that giving up authority, they don't dream small. They are probably the two biggest dreamers I have ever met in my entire life. And we were just going to make a small powwow. And so in the midst of COVID, they managed to pull together one of the only powwows to take place in 2021. And it was so large that we had to rent the largest rental spot in Red Deer. So it's not even on our site. It's like 10 minutes down the road. They rented the Westerner, and then that wasn't good enough. So then the next year they came back and they said, you know what? We could make it bigger, because we only had like 5,000 people the first year show up in COVID with all the restrictions. Yeah, so we even, you know how we have like arenas in Canada and hockey arenas? Well, the arenas are also for concerts and events. And so in the biggest arena that we have in central Alberta, these two led a powwow again. So we've done it twice. Last year was the third time they did this. It was so successful. On their Friday night grand entry, Pat, there were 700 people in the grand entry. They had to dance off the stage. And so what I want to say is, when you give up authority and you just go along for the ride, you never know what you will ever experience. And I will be forever grateful for all the things that these two have taught me, and they've taught I have coworkers who never thought they'd ever volunteer for a powwow. They're like, when's the powwow? I've got to show up. What are we doing? And that's happening not just with our coworkers, it's happening with our community. It is insane that I will be at at the local grocery store and someone will say, hey, Kim, when's the powwow happening? And I have to say, well, I don't know. I haven't talked to Pat and Marissa. And I think if that is, we have 100,000 people that live in Red Deer. If that is not the power of giving up authority and breaking down doors, these two, I can't tell you. They surpass any one of that.
Well, I guess you underestimated the power of what they could do, And in this day and world, where museums are always trying to draw audiences to their doors, I mean, you never expected this, I guess. But and maybe this is an answer for some museums to, how could you engage in local community, and some new content, some interesting, meaningful content. You have it right there. Yeah. Great. Well, it was a great talk, and I really loved hearing all you had to say, but I think we have to wrap it up now. So thank you for being with us today, and I wish you all the best and bigger powwows in the future.
You gotta come to one.
Yes, maybe all across Canada, maybe you can spread it out. Okay, best of luck for both of you and for the museum. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful to meet you.
Yes, wonderful.